After spending a good amount of time with Riders Republic, I'm really enjoying the game. The world is fun to explore, and the sheer variety of fun gameplay styles is actually pretty staggering. However, the controls aren't always intuitive, at least at the start, and there are a few things when it comes to exploration and making progress that I wish I knew when I started. So with this video, I'm going to first share some technical tips, how to learn the controls, how to perform tricks, stuff like that. Then I'm going to share some pointers that I think will make the world more fun to explore. I want to thank Ubisoft for providing a pre-release code for the game, and with that out of the way, let's dive into the world of Riders Republic. When you start Riders Republic, it asks you, do you want to play in Racer mode or Trickster mode? Racer mode gives you control over the camera, but it requires you to use the face buttons to perform rotation tricks. Those would be flips and spins. Trickster mode doesn't allow you to control the camera except when you're on foot, but it does allow you to perform flips and spins using the right analog stick, which admittedly, at least for me, did feel more intuitive. Now, relinquishing control of the camera during races and trick events didn't bother me nearly as much as I thought it would. I honestly think this is something most players will get used to. But not having control of the camera when I was exploring the open world was a bit of a drag. Now, you can explore on foot if you want to look around, but even if you're on a bike, a snowboard, or your snowmobile, this is a world you'll want to be able to look around and see as you're exploring. Anyhow, the game recommends starting out in Racer mode, which I think is a good idea, especially if you just want to roam the landscapes. However, if at any point you think you might want to become a trick expert, rack up super high scores in trick events, or you just find yourself getting frustrated by using the face buttons to rotate your rider, give Trickster mode a shot. Again, using the analog stick to rotate my rider was definitely more intuitive, and even races were still fun in Trickster mode. Now, if you do want to switch control schemes, just go to the Options menu and select the Controller tab. Then select either Racer or Trickster. Finally, there is a third option here called Steep, which I'm assuming replicates the trick controls from Steep. However, I found this button layout to be pretty confusing. For that reason, and to keep this video from getting too complicated, I'm going to limit my advice throughout this video to just Racer and Trickster modes. As for my recommendation, I'd go with Racer mode. It's the most flexible control scheme, and once you get used to it, it works great. However, if you do want more intuitive trick controls and you're fine with relinquishing the camera controls, try out Trickster mode. And if you've played Steep and you're accustomed to that control scheme, try Steep mode. After selecting one of the previously mentioned control schemes, the next most impactful way to adjust the gameplay experience of Riders Republic to your liking, at least if you're doing a lot of tricks, is to try out the game's 3 landing modes. There's Auto mode, Manual mode, and Steep mode. Manual mode is the most challenging because it gives you complete control over your rotation during spins and flips. Rotate too far or not far enough, and you'll wipe out. It's not the easiest thing to get the hang of, especially in Racer mode, where rotation is triggered by pressing the gamepad's face buttons rather than tilting the right analog stick. But that's where Auto mode comes in, which will cause the game to automatically time rotations for you so you land perfectly upright on virtually every jump. Removing the need to focus on your rotation will allow you to instead focus on getting the feel for specific jump animations, jump timing, and performing grabs. More on that in a bit. Now, if you start on Auto mode and sometime later want to master the game at its most challenging, you can always switch back to Manual mode at any time from the Gameplay tab in the Options menu. Okay, but what about the third option? Like in my previous tip, it's also called Steep mode, and it's basically a mix of Manual and Auto modes. You do control the rotation of your rider, but if you let go of the rotation input while you're still high enough in the air, the game will then take over and automatically time the rest of your rotation for a smooth landing. So there you have it. I think Auto and Steep modes will make Riders Republic much more approachable for players who want to learn at their own pace. It can be tempting in Riders Republic to try the most badass tricks possible right out of the gate. But this will involve a lot of wiping out, especially if you're playing in racer mode, and even more especially if you have manual landing mode activated. First off, and this might sound super basic, but start by learning just how to jump. I don't think the game communicated this very well, but even though you do have to press specific inputs to perform flips and spins, if all you want to do is jump without a flip or a spin, you can just press literally any of the 4 face buttons in racer mode, or any direction on the analog stick in Trickster mode. Next, I'd spend some time learning the exact inputs required to perform backflips, front flips, left spins, and right spins. If you want a quick intro, it works like this. Pick whether you want to do a flip or a spin. Then press and hold the appropriate input to wind up your jump. When you let go, you'll become airborne. It's then that you have to press the exact corresponding input to do either a front flip, back flip, left spin, or right spin. And bear in mind that if you're in manual landing mode, this is the input you'll have to hold down in order to complete your rotation. And I know there are moves that combine both flips and spins simultaneously, but I'm trying to keep things pretty simple for this video, so for now, let's move on. First off, Riders Republic calls these maneuvers tricks, but since tricks could mean anything, I'm going to call them grabs. Second, this tip is mostly for players who've decided to play with manual landing mode activated. Okay, as I previously alluded to, if you try grabs in combination with flips and spins before you even learn how to do grabs, you're going to fall on your head a lot. Plus, performing a grab while you're spinning or flipping makes it tough to visually identify one grab from another, which makes it more difficult to memorize which inputs perform which grab. To remedy this, and again, forgive me if I'm stating the obvious here, but try performing grabs on their own, completely void of any spin or flip. When you've got the feel for a specific grab, how it looks, and how long it takes to perform, it's then much easier to integrate that grab into a manually rotated spin or flip. Now, if all this trick talk has you overwhelmed, I wouldn't blame you. Thankfully, there is a place in Riders Republic where you can practice tricks of all types. Let's take a look. Once you get the hang of how basic tricks work, the best way I found to wrap my mind around the more advanced maneuvers was to visit the Tricks Academy, which you'll find near the bowl at Riders Ridge. Here you can run through tutorials for every type of trick in the game, complete with on-screen instructions. This is a great place to learn how certain tricks work mechanically, and it's a great place to memorize grabs. You can also pick which gear you want to learn. So if you want to get better at snowboard or bike tricks, this is the place to do it. Okay, enough about tricks and controls. Let's now look at the world of Riders Republic. You probably know by now that you can view the Riders Republic map in both 2D and 3D, and that the 3D view allows you to zoom in extremely close. It's actually pretty cool. But one thing I didn't discover right away is that if you zoom in close enough, you can actually use this view to find the game's collectibles. Those would be these balloons. There are 500 of them in total, and despite that huge number, they're not always easy to find. But at least this will give you one more way to search them out. Plus, if you do spot one, you can either fast travel nearby, or you can drop a pin in the map and then swing by later when you happen to be in the neighborhood. If you're like me, you might be spending your first hours in Riders Republic just exploring the open world, discovering landmarks, and checking out random points of interest. But if that's the case, you might also be wondering, where the heck are all the new rides, or as the game calls them, gear? Well, if you want to rapidly expand your collection of bikes, snowboards, rocket wings, or wingsuits, you'll have to complete events associated with that gear. So if you want new bikes, complete bike races or bike trick events. The more experience you earn in those careers, the more you'll level up and the better gear you'll unlock. Now, there are a couple other ways to get new rides that I've found. One is to increase your rank for certain sponsors by completing daily sponsor contracts. The rides you can unlock this way are pretty good, but they're few and far between. Another way is to find certain collectibles hidden throughout each region called relics. I haven't found all the relics in the game, but the ones that I have found have rewarded me with special rides called funkies. These are rides that are, well, funky, like a delivery bike or a rocket wing built out of the engine of a crashed airplane. That said, these are also pretty sparse, and they're not always the most functional. So again, if you really want to grow your collection and you want rides that will make you more competitive, you'll want to complete events. One thing I don't think Riders Republic tells you at all, but let me know in the comments if I'm wrong there, is that the game has a first-person mode that works whether you're racing through an event or just exploring the world. Now, whether you use first-person mode is a matter of pure preference, but I highly recommend you at least try it. The sense of speed experienced in first-person is way, and I mean way more intense than in third-person. I still prefer third-person if I'm trying to win, but I have to admit, first person is definitely a thrill. In Racer mode, press the right analog stick to enter first person, and in Trickster mode, press square on PlayStation, and while I didn't play on Xbox, I'm assuming it's the X button. When I was just starting out in Riders Republic, I found it kind of tricky to time my landings using the parachute. That's because even after pulling your parachute, you'll still be moving pretty fast, which makes it difficult to make a precise landing. But the game does have a quick land feature. Now, with a name like Quick Land, I thought this would maybe teleport me to the ground, but no. What it does is force your rider to sail down to any point directly below where you happen to be when you press the Quick Land button. This is super handy if you're trying to land on a very specific or very precarious point in the world that has, say, a collectible. And again, sorry if this tip seems basic, but I was pretty frustrated trying to land before I noticed this feature. Of all the events in Riders Republic, my favorites are hands down the wingsuit events. The reason is simple. They're the most thrilling events in the entire game. The way you score big in the wingsuit is to sail as close as you possibly can to the ground, cliffs, trees, or really anything. And while performing tricks on bikes, skis, or snowboards might take more skill, nothing in the game makes you feel like more of a daredevil than flying mere inches from a 1,000-foot high cliff at 100 miles per hour. And there's some strategy involved. Using a special maneuver called slow mode, you'll be able to extend the time you can fly close to the ground if you're careful. Now, not all air events utilize the wingsuit. Some, of course, have you strapped to your rocket wing. To find wingsuit events, take note of the event description where it says which gear you'll be using. One of the great things about Riders Republic is that it's not exclusive to people who want to hone their skills and earn high scores. A lot of activities in the game are great for casual players, from the downhill races to simply exploring the world. However, I found the game to be at its most rewarding when I challenged myself, and not just by doing tricks. One of the things I enjoyed most was completing the 3 challenges you'll find associated with each event. Sure, sometimes this required me to perform a specific trick, but sometimes these challenges required me to beat a certain time or race across the finish line over a certain speed limit. Or one of my favorites, some events have a challenge where you have to find and snag a certain number of collectibles, which could completely transform a speed-focused challenge into more of an exploration-focused challenge. With so many events, each one having 3 of these challenges, that's a ton of replay value. Next, if you're searching for another way to test your skills, don't shy away from the stunts. These are essentially time trials where you have to complete a particularly challenging track or obstacle course. They're really creative, and while some are pretty easy, others are punishingly difficult. But with enough effort, I've enjoyed each one that I've tried. And there you have it. I hope these tips help you get off to a good start in Riders Republic. I plan on shifting my channel to include a lot more tips and strategy guides for plenty of other games, so if you liked this video, consider subscribing for more. And don't forget to leave a thumbs up if you liked it, or a thumbs down if you didn't. And as always, I want to thank my Boss Mode patrons Brock and Bare Knuckle Bob. Lastly, you can follow me on Twitter at Quest Mode Games, and with that, I want to remind everyone to never stop questing.